Hello, and a very warm welcome to another edition of the
Oh my
Andrew
goodness.
Long Show, talking about celebrity. I'm in disguise today, so I've been joined by my wonderful friend, Richard Jones. How are you, Richard?
Very well, thank you, Andrew. Very well indeed. You're looking very suave and have you got black eyes? Is that it?
Did you recognise me?
I did. Did you get attacked by a fox in Regent's Park or something?
I did. You saw that episode. Was that scary or what? I'll
That's
tell you
even more
what, I was
scary.
petrified. What I loved about it was the murder. That's what they call it, a whole group of them. A murder of crows. The
Yeah.
noise that they made when that murder most foul was happening was extraordinary, wasn't it?
It's horrible. It really is. It's a horrible sound. Carrion. Crows are evil
Carry
creatures.
on and carry on. I tell you what, and talking of murder most foul, carry
Talking
on
of upstart
Shakespeare.
crows.
See what I did there? Carry on Shakespeare, murder most foul. And
Yep.
I thought today, what they love is this little journey down history lane. And every time we did Charles Dickens and we did the fantastic witchcraft book as well. And our segue each time links into something else. And last time we promised our viewer in Milton Keynes, that we would visit them again with a little bit about Shakespeare. Tell me about good old Bill.
Well, good old Bill. I mean, he was a man who had the common touch, or even touch. he was he was from the Midlands. He's from your your Colonel Tom's neck of the woods, I think. But no, he was he was a commoner. I mean, the great thing is, he had something of an education. Ben Jonson really did slag him off by saying, although he had small Greek and little Latin, in other words, he was reminding us that Ben Jonson, university educated, don't you know? Here's Shakespeare. He's only been to grammar school in Stratford-on-Avon. But it was a lot simpler, I suppose, because he didn't have to study Shakespeare in those days when he was at school. But you're right there.
I'm good. You carry on. I'm loving it. Keep going.
And so consequently, we know he came to London at some stage between 1588 and 1592. And we know that by 1592, he was writing for the stage. We know that because of a man called Robert Greene, who was dying on his deathbed, as you do.
There's nothing worse. I'll tell you what, Richard, there's nothing worse than dying somewhere other than on your deathbed.
There isn't.
I'll tell you what, it's so really inconvenient. People do that, don't they? They don't bother to get up and go to their deathbed to die. So I think you're right. When somebody's dying on their deathbed, that's just considerate, isn't it?
And it does. And it's an element of stating the bleeding obvious there as well, isn't it? So he was dying in Dowgate Hill.
But when did he die? Sorry, when did he die?
Well, 1582.
But where was it? Where did he die?
He was on Dowgate Hill. He was living with
was he on his deathbed?
He was on his deathbed.
Oh, thank God for that.
But it was a bed of rags.
So inconvenient.
It was a bed of rags and a hovel.
Oh.
And and he lay dying. And as he lay dying, he started to get very jealous of Shakespeare. And he actually wrote a letter called Green's Groat's Worth of Wit, published with a millionth of repentance. And he went on to warn of an upstart crow, oddly enough.
You see, the fox and the crow, we love that. There's a pattern here somewhere.
Himself with our feathers. And so obviously it's a reference to Shakespeare. And so consequently, we have this attack on Shakespeare in 1582. And so that's how we know he was writing plays in London by 1582. And from that point on, he became a really popular playwright, one of the most popular. Perhaps Christopher Marlowe at the time, Christopher Marlowe before probably been a bit more popular, but Shakespeare suddenly just took that mantle.
It's really weird, isn't it, Richard? Because we talk about this whole cult of celebrity, and we worked out last time that probably the first global celebrity was probably Charles Dickens. I mean, Shakespeare, in terms of his impact on the world, has obviously happened a lot later. Talk to me about that side of his fame.
The later side. Well, it's from about the 18th century onwards. He starts to become really popular. I mean, to be honest, the thing about Shakespeare is when he wrote a play, the play wasn't his. It belonged to the theatre company.
The play's the thing.
That's it.
I'll tell you what we're going to try and do. I'll try and get as many Shakespearean quotes into this as possible. That's one. I should have a little clicker. The play's the thing. Murder most foul. I've got two already. Keep going.
Yeah. So he tried to get as many quotes from Shakespeare in as he could into the works of William Shakespeare. But
rubbish sentence is that?
Well, I just thought if you're going to do it, I'll do it as well. So yeah, and it was really later on in the 18th century he became more popular. I suppose it's with David Garrick, when you sort of get David Garrick starts doing his performances from Shakespeare, and then from that point on he becomes very popular in the
And
theatre.
isn't that weird? I mean, I feel so sorry. We often hear about this, that artists who are impoverished during their life turn around and get successful after their death. And it's hardly any consolation. I have a lot of really brilliant artists on this show, and I tell them, well, think of Shakespeare, you know. It took him until the 18th century until he was any good internationally.
Well, no,
so don't worry.
Think about Shakespeare, though. He wasn't starving. He was a very wealthy man by the time of his death. I mean, he owned the second biggest house in Stratford-on-Avon.
Who owned the first? I see, that's no good. You've got to be more ambitious. If I turned around to Shakespeare, knocked on his door, "Oi, you've got the second biggest house in the whole of Stratford-on-Avon." He'd say, "Well, who's got the biggest? Isn't that right? Who had it?"
I don't know. I don't know who has the biggest.
No good not know. What sort of researcher are you? I love it. You could have turned around. It's terrible.
But no, he was very wealthy by the time of his death, and in fact, he hadn't made his money from his writings. He'd made his money from investing. He was a partner in the various playhouses, so he became a partner in a playhouse. He was a partner in the company, but the money he did make, he reinvested in real estate. So he made his money in property.
And isn't that the truth nowadays? So many people make their money from property. Lord Sugar, my old pal, always watches this show. Amstrad was brilliant. We had that sort of emailer from the early days where you tap it in, you get your email stuff. He made his money from property. So Shakespeare, isn't that fascinating? Those who did not know, Shakespeare was a brilliant playwright. Years and years after his death, he made his international fame, but his money was made from property. Talk to me about that bit. Where was his property?
Well, he had properties in various parts of London. He had property in Stratford. If you go down St Andrew's Hill, which is just in the Blackfriars district across from St Paul's, you'll find a pub there called the Cockpit. And if you look up on the wall, just before the Cockpit, there's a blue plaque on the wall. And that blue plaque says that William Shakespeare had, he bought lodgings there, but he took a lease on the gatehouse of the old Blackfriars Monastery. And he had it for 24 hours, and then he sold the lease on. So,
he had it for 24 hours. What do you
24 or so hours, and then he sold the lease on.
Ultimate bed and breakfast, they call that. You buy it one day, you sell it the next.
But that's it. He's buying, he's selling. He's a wheeler dealer. He's the Del boy of the 17th century.
Bill, the wheeler dealer. I love it. Put it on my bill, mate. It's got to be good. I love it.
Yep. So and that's how he made his money. But he was popular. I mean, the nice thing about Shakespeare was that everybody seems to have liked him. So those who met him,
I bet not everybody liked him. I bet there was somebody who really hated him. I'll tell you what, I know throughout history, there's always somebody who's a little bit jealous. Who was that person?
Well, Robert Greene, certainly, the chap who was dying on his deathbed.
There you go, told you. So when you come on with your glib statement saying everybody loved him, they didn't. Robert Greene hated him.
Robert Greene didn't. Robert Greene didn't really hate him. He hated what he felt Shakespeare had done. He called him the upstart crows, beautified himself with our feathers. In other words, he accused him of plagiarism. And Shakespeare, when Greene's Groat's Worth of Wit came out, it was, in fairness to Greene, it wasn't him who published it. When he died, all the printers swooped on the hovel and they seized and published what they could. And so it got published by, I think it was Henry Chettle was the publisher who published it. And Shakespeare actually went to see him, and the printer actually apologized to Shakespeare, said, I've met him now, and he really is a nice he calls him a gentleman.
And I tell you what, Richard, this is what I love about this show, is that people who have written so much about Shakespeare and his plays and his great works and the wonderful quotes, and they come up and they insert them appropriately, say, how brilliant is this man? What you've revealed so far today is that firstly, he didn't make his money from plays, not from that sort of stuff. He didn't really enjoy international success until centuries later. He made his money from property. You also revealed the fact that there was one person who was jealous. Not everybody loved him.
Yeah.
What else can you tell me about Shakespeare the man?
Shakespeare the man. Well, he was very passionate. There's no doubt about that. You can see that.
What does that mean?
You can see it in his sonnets. You can see, but the honest truth is,
I don't want to see his sonnets. I've been seeing some extraordinary things. I'll tell you about it in a little bit. But no, you're right about passion, because passion sells. Sex sells. And even going all the way back to the glorious Chaucer times and back to Socrates and Aristophanes and so on and so forth, what I love about it is history says that sex sells, doesn't it?
Sex sells, and there's a lot of sex in Shakespeare. There's a mighty amount of sex in Shakespeare. And it was popular. I mean, the thing was, he was popular with the rough audiences. Don't forget, I mean, it's not like the polite theatre we have today. These were performing in theatres that were done in the afternoon, and it's done effectively in an open-air theatre. So he's standing on the stage at the Globe, or he's writing for the stage at the Globe, and the audience is there. They're called groundlings because very, very few of them are sitting. They're all standing, crammed in.
I've been there. And I love that on the South Bank now. I mean, you've been down there, I know, but
yeah.
If people haven't been down there, go down today. Well, you can't see anything today, there's nothing on. But have a look when you can at the Globe Theatre, because the Globe Theatre is so fantastic as an experience. And I've not just seen it in the fantastic Royal Box, and I've been there and done that, but being as a groundling and seeing how different people from Shakespearean's audiences appreciated the theatre is just such an experience, isn't it?
Yeah, and and the audience would have felt, I mean, don't forget they've been in the taverns all day. And they probably started their day drinking as well. So the audiences were smashed out of their skulls.
Hey, and, wow, we love all of that.
Alas, poor Yorick.
What a load of Yoriks. I love that. Yeah. That's going to be fun. Actually, you make an interesting point. Because I say, rather than doing all the stuff that people say always about Shakespeare, did people used to heckle him?
Yeah, well, not perhaps him, but they heckled the plays. And if it was a particularly unfortunate character who was an evil character, the audience would get joined in. They'd start swearing at him, or they'd start cursing the character. And the thing was, there's probably quite a lot of one-liners in Shakespeare that were improvisation. That came to, it's like a comedian today. When you get a put down, you've got a heckler in the audience, and you get a good put down. Use it the next time. It's a great put down, so it becomes part of your act.
And that's fantastic. So some of Shakespeare was actually developed during the live performance, because there's nothing better than a well-rehearsed put down. A well-rehearsed ad-lib is superb. So give me some of those. Which were the well-rehearsed ones?
I haven't got the foggiest idea.
I haven't got the foggiest idea, said Shakespeare.
That was a good one.
I don't remember that one. Which play was that in?
That was in Much Ado About Nothing, or a lot of
Much Ado About Nothing is absolutely appropriate. You're making it up as you go along. I bring on the great and the good of the industry, the learned of the learned, and you come and you make it up, Richard Jones.
Making it on the spot. But no, I mean, there's lines in there that would, and there's lines that are designed to get the audience as well. So there's mention, for example, of the Winchester geese. And Winchester geese were the prostitutes working in the brothels.
Well, we love our geese.
Yeah, and they were
go and have a gander at the geese.
But the brothels were owned by the Bishop of Winchester.
Of course.
So they were known. So the prostitutes were known as the Winchester geese.
Oh, fantastic! And how was he?
Who?
Oh, the Bishop of Winchester.
How was he?
Yes.
He was very well. He was quite happy to pay to take the money out of them. He wouldn't let the ladies be buried in consecrated ground.
Are you saying the Bishop of Winchester was a pimp?
Well, if you go to the New Globe, you'll see there's a house, an old house next to it on the right as you walk along Bankside.
Oh, I've been there. Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, and there's an alleyway down the side called Cardinal Cap Alley, and that led to one of the brothels called the Cardinal Cap. And it was said to be the big joke about that brothel was that there was always a cardinal's cap hung on the hat peg just inside to sort of give the impression there was always a cardinal in there.
I bet there was, and in there is the right expression. But I didn't realise that he used to get money from it.
Yeah. Well, he didn't directly get the money from it, but he owned the ground rents, so he got the rent from the ground. And there's a wonderful little burial ground actually, which if you go down to Red Cross Street. There's a burial ground on the left, which is the Crossbones Burial Ground. And if you look on the gates of that, that's where it used to be called the Single Woman's Burial Ground or the Harlot's Burial Ground. And if you look on the gate, they've actually got Crossbones Graveyard. And then there's a goose next to it. And that's a reference to the Winchester geese.
Oh, I love that. Isn't that brilliant? What I also love is that when you look back at history, they always, and actually I don't love it, what we hate about it, because the industry's changed so much now, is that single women were sort of classified in that whole sort of harlot thing, weren't they? What was the problem with single women?
With a lot of them, probably not a great deal of problem. It depended on where the single women were. In the area of the brothels, of course, they were going to be they were going to be working in the brothels. So consequently, that's where the problem was. But I say it was called the single woman's burial ground, but it was also known as the harlot's burial ground.
No, quite extraordinary. Well, what I love, we're going to call this episode Shakespeare's Sex Secrets, because I love a bit of clickbait. And people don't talk about this, which is wonderful. So we're going to finish on one thing. Oh, go for it, yes?
Andrew, can I just say, though, shall I compare thee to a summer's day?
Well, only if you carry on. I don't know. You can compare me to the summer's day, because the summer's day has been the same as the winter's day, the same as the Easter day, because everybody's been locked down. They've got no idea what's going on.
I know.
You can compare me
but
to
you know what? This is the funny thing. In Shakespeare's day, plague came regularly. There was regularly plague in London. And whenever the plague came, the theatres had to close down. So it's we're in the same sort of
Isn't
era.
that true? So they had. We're talking because what I loved about this, and we talked about this in a previous episode, it was one of the first examples of fake news. Because first time people heard about the plague, they misheard, although some bit of miscommunication, said it was all to do with the cats. The cats were to blame. And so everybody slaughtered all their cats. And as they misheard, and what happens, the actual problem was from the rats. And so because they slaughtered the cats, the plague got worse and worse and worse because the cats were eating the rats. And it's the first example, or one of the first examples, of fake news and the damage that it can cause. Is that right?
Well, strictly speaking, no.
Oh, thank God for that. Don't let the truth stand in the way of a good story.
That is actually fake news. But no, I mean, what they did notice, interestingly enough, in a way it's right. What they noticed was that...
Well, hang about. No, you can't get away with that. What do you mean, in a way it's right? In a way it's right. I'll take at this moment. You can't dismiss it, just say, nah, that's wrong.
I'm not going to dismiss it.
In a way it's right. I'll take it away it's right. Which way is it right?
The cats and dogs died first because they were the closest to the rats.
Thank you. I'll take that one.
Yeah. And so they thought, it's the dogs and cats. And so therefore, with the dogs and cats gone, there's nothing to keep the rats in check. Because they didn't know what was causing the plague, they thought it might be miasmic, that it might be smell that was causing it.
Miasmic? What's wrong with miasmic?
Miasmic.
I had the loveliest asthma you can see. There's nothing wrong with it.
But no, but just like today, there was all sorts of quacks going around, sort of saying all sorts of cures for it. This will cure the plague. This will cure the plague.
What were the best things from the quacks? What did they say?
Best thing of the quacks was, well, one of the things was, we still got it today, the ring of roses, a pocket full of posies. Because they thought it was caused by smell, they'd have a pocket full of posies. And when they got the bad smell, they'd put posies over their nose.
All fall down. Yeah. That could be our plague today, couldn't it? I love that.
Yeah. And of course, the first sign of the plague was you sneezed, and then plague set in.
But what was on the posies? The posies was that you got a little smell
flowers.
Or something.
Yeah, so little flowers. So posies, as in floral. And
that's what I love. They talk about the raccoon being the iconic animal of what we have now in 2020, because it wears a mask, it's always washing its hands, and raccoon is actually an anagram. Break that anagram. What is it? Countdown. Time's up. Raccoon is an anagram of corona.
Is it really?
You heard it here first.
I'm going to just...
2020 animal, which is going to represent the year, I can reveal live on this show while Richard Jones searches his Google. You're playing with your Google in public.
I've just written it down. You're right.
Thank you. Look at me being right. So the raccoon is an anagram of corona. So we have cracked it. The mascot for 2020 is the raccoon. It's got the mask. It's got always washing its hands if you watch it when it does that wildlife stuff with David commentating. And also it's an anagram. We cracked it all here today. Shakespeare's Sex Secrets, raccoon being the 2020 animal. We're going to finish on one highlight. What is the biggest secret that people don't know about William Shakespeare? What is it?
What is the biggest secret that people don't know about William Shakespeare? That when he was a young man, he was very naughty indeed. And he got involved with an older woman, and the older woman ended up with child. And as far as we know, he thought his life was over. 19 years old, he had to get married. It was almost a shotgun wedding, we think. He was forced into marrying Anne Hathaway. And it seems it was a very loving marriage, but maybe that's the one thing, that he was hot-blooded, got involved with the older woman, they had a child together, they got married before the child was born, Susanna, and and then towards the end of his life, when he drew up his will,
Will had a will.
He had a will. Will had a will, and he actually left his wife his second best bed.
So what do you mean the second best? That's not rather like being the second best house. Where was the best bed?
I'm glad you asked me that, Andrew. I'm glad you asked me that, because there is an answer to that. The best bed was always reserved for guests. The second best bed was the marital bed. So in leaving the second best bed, he's thinking of the marriage. The point is that by only leaving her the second best bed, that meant that the estate passed to his daughter, but her very able husband, Dr. John Hall. And that meant Anne Hathaway would be protected from any legal cases that were brought out of his will. So he was actually thinking of her and protecting her. But a lot of people think that meant the marriage was unhappy, but it wasn't.
No, he was a very happy married man. He would never, ever, ever appear on the Jeremy Kyle show, even if that was back on air, would he? He was a man they loved. It has been a delight, as always, Richard Jones, to catch up with you with the unknown Shakespeare, Shakespeare's sex secrets. We're going to do that. Clickbait. It's been a joy. Thank you for joining me.
Can I just say as we go, to quote the old Shakespearean phrase, I'm going to name drop now. Donald Sinden told me this one. He told me that it's a very famous line in a play in Macbeth, stage direction in Macbeth, and it's enter Lady Macbeth with candle, right upper exit, and then at the end of the scene, exit Lady Macbeth with candle, left upper exit.
Oh, we love it. Shakespeare's Sex Secrets, right here on Octopus TV. Richard Jones, it has been a delight and a revelation. Thank you for joining me.
Curtain.
So thank you indeed to my very special guest, Richard Jones, talking about Shakespeare and his sex secrets. We love it. All here on Octopus TV. If you yourself would like to be a guest and reveal your secrets, sexual or otherwise, write to me at guests@octopustv.com. That's guests@octopustv.com. In the meantime, thank you for joining me. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.